Thank you very much indeed. I'm very privileged to be here with you to discuss and to share information. Now, we don't have all the information, obviously, and I'm sure you've got ideas that we could learn from. Now, I'm involved with two organizations. One is called Windrush Foundation. It's to do with the ship that came from the Caribbean in 1948. It landed in Tilbury. The men and women had served in the Second World War, and some of them were coming back to help to rebuild Britain. So it's about Windrush. It's about the Windrush men and women helping to build a multicultural Britain, and so on. I'm also involved in the Equiano Society. Olaudah Equiano was of Igbo heritage. He was an enslaved African at about 12, 13. He was kidnapped, taken to Barbados. Then he was taken to Virginia. And then he was sold again and brought to England. He also served as a powder monkey in the Royal Navy as a young man. But eventually, after the 7-Year War, he was able, in fact, he was resold into slavery, and he spent 4 years in Montserrat. He was sold for £40, and eventually Equiano bought his freedom for £40. And in those days, £40 is about 3 years' money. So he was able to save that money, that £40. And in fact, he was also able to have a party afterwards as well, having got his freedom. So he was able to save, let's say, about £60 or whatever in those days. Now, the topic has a word that I'd like to add to. I'd like to add the word abolition, and I hope you don't mind to the topic today, in the sense that we often forget abolition when we're discussing enslavement. Abolition itself has its own story. And not long ago, in fact, just last week, and I'd like, can you hand these out for me? I don't think I have enough, but what it's, if you can just pass it around, just half it, and just pass it around. What it is, it's about an exhibition called Making Freedom. Making Freedom is about commemorating 175 years after full emancipation in the Caribbean. Many of you might not realize that in 1838, Britain allowed nearly 1 million Africans to go free, to be freed in the Caribbean. Now, they ought to have been freed fully in 1834, but somehow Britain, unfortunately, played a trick on the ancestors and brought in something called apprenticeship. And that in itself was a form of enslavement in 1834. But the people who live in Antigua, they were freed and given full freedom on the 1st of August, 1834. People who were in Canada got their freedom on the 1st of August, 1834. The people in the Cape of Good Hope, that's South Africa. There was enslavement in South Africa, and they got their freedom as well in 1834. And people in Mauritius, there was slavery in Mauritius as well, and they got their freedom in 1834. So our project really is saying that Africans did something for themselves in the leading up to emancipation. They weren't just given freedom because, the Queen was sorry for them. It was a case of Africans being agency in their own emancipation. Now, I tell you why that is so. We've done some studies to show that the Haitian Revolution, 1791, and then the Declaration of Independence or a Republic in 1804, generated enough impetus from the enslaved Africans in the Caribbean. It was an impetus. Now, I passed around some leaflets to show you, and those of you who are able to get copies, to give you an idea that the 1st of August, 1838, was an important day in the Caribbean, and that Africans many of them walked away from the plantations. And that's why eventually a lots of people from Asia, you had Chinese going to the Caribbean, you've got Portuguese, you've got obviously South Asians. What people don't realize as well, that indentureship also included Africans. Africans were indentured. In fact, I'm told that one of my uncles from the past was from Lagos. And one of my cousins have a copy of his birth certificate, which meant that indentureship also included African people. We are told that possibly 50,000 Africans were indentured, whereas up until 1970, 1919, there were about 500,000 Asian people who were indentured in the Caribbean. So what I'm trying to say is this. When we are actually looking at enslavement and memory, we need to consider that Africans, for example, in 1816, there was a rebellion in Barbados. You had Bussa. He thought that he could gather together men and women who would fight against the British. Well, you can't fight against the British, with knives and forks and spoons. You have to have guns. And what he didn't have was guns. Enough guns to fight the British in Barbados, 1816. And then in 1823 in Demerara, that's Guyana, another person by the name of Comina, and another relative of his by the name of Jack Gladstone. Now, by the way, Jack Gladstone was an enslaved African in the plantation of Sir John Gladstone, whose son, William Gladstone, was the Prime Minister of Britain. So these guys were all involved in enslaving African people in the Caribbean, especially this Sir John Gladstone. There is a project in London to do with compensation, and he got something like £110,000. Now today, that's 110 million. That's what Gladstone got. And in fact, we had this exhibition that I've passed around to you, which was in the Houses of Parliament last week. And we invited David Cameron, we invited Nick Clegg, and well, in fact, even before, we had the exhibition in the House of Parliament, this Making Freedom, we had the exhibition in the Marcus Garvey Library in London, and then the RGS in Kensington. And we invited them, and they were too busy to attend. So we brought the exhibition into the house. And it was not that far away, and they couldn't make it, they told us. So in terms of memory, what we have actually realized is that this thing about enslavement and abolition, there is a particular memory gap in the minds of certain people at the very top. Even now, I had a letter from the Secretary of, I believe it's the Foreign Minister, Foreign Secretary, just about 2 days ago, saying to me, we asked them for a quote from the Prime Minister. Can I detail what I really want from the Prime Minister? So I had to say to the Prime Minister that we're not asking for him for a quote about slavery, a quote about abolition. And I think that is the actual thing that we need to say. Because abolition, just to summarize and get going to the other panelists, is that Africans eventually in Jamaica, Sam Sharp was a Baptist deacon, and he organized something like 60,000 African men and women in Jamaica who realized that they're impatient about slavery. Whereas in 1823, William Wilberforce and Buxton, they were talking about what is called gradual emancipation. That was a discussion, right? But there's a lady by the name of Elizabeth Herrick, who from Leicestershire. She said, no, we disagreed with Wilberforce. The Africans must have immediate emancipation. And whereas Wilberforce didn't want the women to get involved in the abolition movement, they formed their own movement, the women. And in that sense, they were able to campaign on immediate emancipation. And then, 6-7 years after, Sam Sharp and 60,000 Africans in in Jamaica, especially in the western part of Jamaica, St. James. They decided that, look, this particular thing to do with emancipation is getting, it's too long-winded, it's not going to come. And they decided to rebel. And, well, again, they didn't have enough weapons, but at least they were able to, well, to fight their way through. And unfortunately or fortunately, to burn a lot of villages and plantations to the tune of £1 million. Now, today it's 1 billion, right? And that particular rebellion and all the murders and the killings and the fighting among the people in the western part of Jamaica forced Parliament to decide that emancipation would be immediate. We have documents to show that that's exactly what happened in the select committees that they had. They decided that if Africans were not given their freedom now, they'd burn the whole of Jamaica down. And in that particular sense, and of course lives will be lost, both white and black and who will be lost. Like in Haiti, Haiti had a particular rebellion, a particular revolution, lots of killing, and they felt that that shouldn't happen in Jamaica. And that forced Parliament to grant emancipation. And therefore, we look at slavery and emancipation in a similar way.